Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices, where we take on the most pressing issues confronting Black America. Here with me today are my most talented teammates in this endeavor, Professor and author Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, New York Times bestselling author Caleb Alexander, and businessman and community activist Chris Dawkins. And of course, I am the writer Fred. Probably the most serious issue today is the continuous struggle between the Black community and the police forces across this country, highlighted by the inordinate amount of police shootings that have led to the killings of Black Americans. In the year following the murder of George Floyd, there were 229 cases of police killings, someone Black ranging in ages from 1 month to 80 years old. This is simply police brutality at its worst. And this has been going on since Blacks first arrived in this country as slaves. In fact, the police, especially in the South, were created simply to help keep Blacks submissive to the brutality of slavery. It has continued since, and each year seems to increase. Needless to say, Black Americans have grown weary of trusting any police, be it city cops or sheriff deputies. They have good reason to not trust law enforcement. In fact, some of the younger Blacks have called for defunding the police. Now, I do not believe that is the answer. So what can we do to try to bring some semblance of equity in treatment and a working relationship between our communities and the police? To take on this complex issue, we have invited one of the leading community activists who has over the years challenged the influence of the police union in the city, and that is former city councilman Mario Salas, and he's also professor of American Studies and American Government at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Welcome, Professor, to Contemporary Black Voices.
Well, thank you very much for Fred and the panel for having me. Glad to be here.
Okay, well, let's jump right into it.
All right.
Okay. This has been going on, we know, for decades, for centuries. The problem with Black and the police. So are we taking on a monumental challenge when we say we can try to find an answer so that everybody will be happy? Is that possible?
Yeah.
And I'm turning to the expert because I know you've done a lot in the city with the police union and the police.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'd like to deal with it from two different perspectives, one of which has to do with white supremacy. And I think David Walker, the famous abolitionist, way back in the early 1800s, said, nothing short of eternity will ever get rid of white supremacy. Derek Bell said that too.
Yes.
Very famous author who wrote Voices from the Bottom of the Well.
Right.
That no matter what kind of effort we put forth, he called it Herculean efforts, it's never going to go away. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I understand the point because white supremacy has permeated society so solidly for so long.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing to that is police unions or police associations. They seem to be the number one problem related to all of this stuff, because every time there's a questionable shooting, killing, choking, or whatever the case may be of a police officer against a Black person, then it seems always, and I'm pretty sure it's always, that the association they belong to will come to their aid, even though they may know that that officer broke the law. And so we're dealing with a contractual situation that police unions have been allowed to sign contracts and at the same time discipline their own. So in my opinion, the short and dirty of it is, and there's a lot of nuances I'm sure you want to get into, the short and dirty of it is, in order to prevent some of this stuff, these police contracts have to be changed so they cannot discipline themselves. So they cannot be above the law. They love to be above the law. And I think their history shows that. So these contracts, which in my mind are violations of the Fourth, to some degree the First, the Fifth, and especially the 14th Amendment to the federal Constitution, as long as they're allowed to violate those civil rights amendments by a contract, that's one of the principal problems.
Well, it seems to me you're really addressing the unions, and I agree with you. The unions are the problem. And I do believe that unions can endorse candidates, right?
Correct.
So all these candidates go before these union people and argue or say, I'm going to take care of you. So that takes us one step further. It's a part of the people that were elected.
Yeah, well, and here's always the tricky part, because the First Amendment guarantees, a union the right to lobby, a union the right to say what they want and all of that. But the problem is, there's not, last time I checked, there's not carpenters, plumbers, or pipe fitters or bricklayers that are murdering people in the street.
Right, yeah.
Because they're not engaged in the front line of methods used to protect the public, and that front line involves violence.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about unions that, the trades unions, they're not beating up people and hammering people in the head with hammers. Carpenters are not murdering people with saws, but the police have a special responsibility, and that special responsibility is they stand in the line between life and death. So should they be able to discipline themselves? I don't think so.
Yeah. And isn't it also a situation where we can't blame all the police? I mean, there are good policemen.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good police officers, many of whom I know personally. And one of the things that I really appreciated, I've had officers tell me, I believe in what you're saying, because I don't want to have to ride along with a bad cop. He's liable to get me killed.
Yeah.
And so what we've found out in some of the negotiations between the police officer and the city, and then files being charged, what we found out over the course of years, in many cases, not all, it's an other police officer who files a complaint against the other police officer. So good officers are sick and tired of the bad ones, but these unions keep protecting the bad ones. And of course, in San Antonio, we've had the case of an officer repeatedly calling the black man the N-word. We had the dog poop cop that fed a homeless man a feces sandwich, and the union protecting them. They shouldn't allow to do that, in my opinion. And as long as they're doing that, the community's not going to trust them. They can have all the midnight basketball games they want.
I know.
That
Yeah.
ain't
That's not going to do
that
it.
ain't going to solve the problem. Matter of fact, it makes them look not too smart.
Yeah, yeah. Someone else have a question? You want to jump in?
I did have a question. One of the things that we have heard about the need to supposedly fix the problem is to hire police officers who live in the community and have a more community influence. So I'm thinking about there's kind of like a slippery slope on that, if you will, because a lot of your inner city communities are becoming gentrified. So the more gentrified it becomes, the more the police officers will start looking like the people who gentrified. What happens to the people who were originally there? Can they be protected? Or are the gentrifiers raising enough complaints about the people who were originally there to where they're finally being forced out or put in jail?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. You're right. I don't agree that solves it. And not only that, I mean, when you're looking at a police force, at least San Antonio's police force, mainly from officers, don't even live in San Antonio.
Yeah.
They're not even from here. So, and I don't know, and I think you're right. I don't know that hiring only ones from San Antonio is legal, number one, but also I agree with you. I don't think that necessarily will solve the problem, because even if they live in close by or in an area, where people live, I don't know they want anybody to know where they live. And that's why it's easier for people out of town. I mean, think about that. The police officer beats you up. He lives in Bernie, lives in Fredericksburg. You have no idea where he lives. You can't even protest in front of his house because he doesn't live here. So I guess there's two sides to that story. If he lived here, yeah, maybe he needs to have his house protested if he broke the law and nothing's being done and he's being protected. But that's a really good point you raise about gentrifying a black neighborhood into a white one.
Yeah, because there's a case right now where the gentrifiers are complaining about the noise outside, saying they're too noisy, they're making too much noise. The case in Houston was a Turkey Hut. Was it a Turkey Hut?
Oh, the Turkey Lake Hut.
The Turkey Lake Hut. They've been there for years, but the gentrifiers were complaining about the too much smoke is in the air, stuff like that.
And traffic.
Okay. Chris, you have a question?
Well, first of all,
Yeah, question.
first of all, I want to thank you for being here.
Sure.
Couple things I wanted to clear up and also have you to address. The first thing is that from a standpoint of a black perspective, we as black people, and I want the viewers to understand this, we are not anti-police. And I think that's very important
Correct.
to put out there. We are not anti-police. The second thing in which I want you to also address is about defunding the police. I think it was a terrible term to be able to use. I think that people misunderstood it at the time that it was being used and continues to misunderstand it. And because whenever that word is used, it's almost like a buzzword that we're trying to take money from the police. That is not the case. Can you talk about defund the police, what it means and how we got there?
Yeah, first off, and I agree with you 100%. I'm not anti-police, never have been. I am an anti-bad cop.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
we all are.
Yeah, we all are. So, and the term defund, yeah, that to me was a bad, politically, was a bad mistake. Because just like playing any sports game, where contact sports, where basketball, football, where you're looking for an opening in the enemy's defense, well, the moment they used the word defund, it should have woke somebody up and said, if we say that, they're going to try to say we're trying to get rid of police. And that's exactly what they did. And so that term should have never been used. They could have thought, in my opinion, they could have thought of a better term, reprogram dollars so that it takes care of mentally ill situations or domestic violence, hire cops that are experts from domestic violence that work with sociologists and psychologists. And so, I mean, yeah, and I think you're right, Chris. I have a slogan. I back the blue, but I don't back the fool.
Right.
We're
Look,
going to take a break here, and we'll come right back. Okay, we'll pick it there.
Okay.
It's Contemporary Black Voices at Black Video Network. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with you.